Ongoing investigation into the deadly beating of Robert Brooks at the Marcy Correctional Facility on December 9th, 2024.
What happened was being beaten.
All right, let's do it.
They don't want you to know the truth. They don't want you to know the truth. They don't want you to know the truth.
Hey, peace, everybody. Sorry about that. Hey, peace, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Disrupted Chaos. This is Rosa Clemente. The show is sponsored by Cooperation Jackson. It is Wednesday, February 26th, 7:02 p.m. And in Albany, New York, it's about 35 degrees. Okay, so anybody in Cali or Las Vegas or whatever, I hope you enjoy the warmness as it's been freezing cold so much here. So, first and foremost, I hope everyone is well. Every day is another nightmare in this country. It's just keeps getting crazier and crazier. With that said, I hope this show really motivates people motivates people to do work locally in your community based on self-determination and mutual aid. And as always, I highlight my 4 organizations that I am part of in some ways. So Cooperation Jackson, Jackson, Mississippi, the Build and Fight formula. Please, everybody, sign up to that newsletter. Then there's Liberation Farm here in upstate New York. My dear comrade Omawali Adewole is and his partner have Liberation Farm for the people. And Soulfire Farm up here in, again, upstate New York. I'm telling y'all, if you live in New York and you want to get away from the madness, we're doing a lot of great stuff up here. So Soulfire Farm in Grafton, New York, Liberation Farm, I don't remember the exact town, Cooperation Jackson. And please also tune into my show on Thursday, Can't Stop Our Blackness. I've opened up the show for people that identify as Afro-Black Latinx, but also have a Black radical politic, and inviting people on. And I'm just gonna check real quick to see where my guest is at. Okay, I'm gonna send my guest a new link. Let me remove my. All right. Sorry, a little technical difficulty. So I will just start over. Peace fam, welcome to another episode of Disrupt the Chaos. Today is Wednesday, February 26, 2025. I'm here in Albany, New York, and I hope people from around the country are watching. Please share these interviews so we can continue to grow the audience here. And as well, sign up to get the newsletters for Soulfire Farm, Liberation Farm, Cooperation Jackson, the three organizations that I'm happy to be part of in any way. And thank you to Cooperation Jackson for being the sponsor of Disrupt the Chaos, and as well the sponsor for Can't Stop Our Blackness, which airs on Thursdays at 7 p.m. So as I'm waiting for my guest, who is the lawyer of Robert Brooks. I don't assume everybody knows this case, but it's now really nationwide because of the horrific way these correctional officers with body cameras beat to death Robert Brooks. And the case is, and where it's at legally, geographically, is in Utica, New York, which is about an hour and a half up from Albany, New York. So we're going to be following this case for a very, very long time. Last time I did this with Elizabeth, the lawyer, it doesn't bring her on. So now I have to restart the whole thing. All right, fam, my bad. I got to restart everything, get her on first, and then I'll start again.
Hi there.
Elizabeth, I feel like every time I'm like, somebody doesn't want this on. So I'll just start over real quickly. Technical stuff. Bam. Okay, so thank you again, everybody, for watching Disrupted Chaos. My name is Rosa Clemente. Today is Wednesday, February 26, 2025. I'm here in Albany, New York. And Elizabeth, you're in Chicago or maybe?
Correct.
Great. So what I want to do is show a little bit of footage from two videos that I had just seen today. But because I cannot add them, what I'm about to do, this is a good hack for anybody, I'm going to turn my laptop around and you're going to see these, one clip is about 3 minutes and another one I'm going to literally run for 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so basically, fam, what I'm doing is I'm turning my laptop around real quick.
The third year, those who were to.
This is breaking news.
Happening right now, officials are giving a press conference on the ongoing investigation into the deadly beating of Robert Brooks at the Marcy Correctional Facility on December 9th, 2024.
While Robert was being beaten. And finally, the third year, those who were to a lesser extent aware of what was happening to Robert, or should have been aware of what was happening to him, and did nothing. The most important question that we faced, and that, which I think will be the centerpiece of the trial, whatever that is, will be what did Robert die from? The latter question has been answered to my satisfaction and to the satisfaction of the grand jury by the Onondaga County Assistant Medical Examiner, Katja Merkelova. Robert died of massive beating to his body, both externally and internally. Several of his internal organs were bruised. His hyoid bone was fractured. His thyroid cartilage was ripped. He also died as a result of repeated restrictions to his airways, causing severe brain damage. And finally, he died by choking on his own blood. Our investigation revealed that in addition to the tape beating, which you probably have already seen, Robert was beaten on 2 prior occasions between 9:07 and the time of his death, within minutes of his arrival at Marcy. Our investigation further revealed that there was no provocation by Robert Brooks that would have precipitated any physical response whatsoever, never mind the physical response that was inflicted upon him. I think any sentient human being looking at the tapes naturally comes to the conclusion that he must have said something. He must have spit at the officers. He must have resisted in some way. And the fact of the matter is, he did absolutely nothing. The first beating took place in what is referred to as the arsenal section of Marcy. It's the first enclosed structure that Robert entered.
Murderer! Murderer! Murderer!
Tonight, tense moments in court as one by one and in handcuffs, 9 former or suspended New York State corrections officers made their first appearance before an Oneida County judge. 5 of them, Nicholas Anzalone, David Kingsley, Anthony Farina, Christopher Walrath, and Matthew Gallagher, facing murder charges for the December death of inmate Robert Brooks. Redacted body camera video from that day shows the group of officers repeatedly kicking and punching Brooks in the legs and chest and trying to jam an object down his throat.
This man murdered my father. It was on video. The whole world got to see it.
The alleged murder happened inside a medical examination room at the Marcy Correctional Facility in upstate New York on December 9th of last year.
Robert Brooks committed a crime. He was doing his time. He had a right to safety, to humanity. He was denied that. This is unacceptable.
3 other corrections officers, David Walters, Michael Fisher, and Michael Mashaw, facing charges of manslaughter, and 1, Nicholas Gentile, of tampering with evidence.
Our investigation further revealed that there was no provocation by Robert Brooks that would have precipitated any physical response whatsoever, never mind the physical response that was inflicted upon him.
All defendants pleading not guilty today.
When the formal procedures entered into not to do on purpose of this one.
and released on bail Orange Tito's case of his own recognizance. Brooks was serving a 12-year sentence for stabbing his girlfriend and died from his injuries the next day.
I want to make the man around me the opportunity.
Robert Brooks's father, among those watching today from the courtroom.
You marched him out, you let him go. My son didn't get that opportunity. My son didn't have a bail. And my son didn't have a murder charge.
And Marquise Francis joins us now. Marquise, there is one more individual in this case facing a murder charge who did not appear in court at all today.
Yeah, that's right, Morgan. There's a sixth defendant, unnamed defendant, that was also charged with murder. In fact, this person's name was redacted in the unsealed court documents that were revealed in court today. Now, what we did hear from the district attorney, this person was unable to surrender themselves today and appear in court, but they are not a flight risk. Even though we do not know their name, they are expected to appear before a judge in the near future.
It's terrible. It's so bad to watch this.
Yeah.
So again, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us. Can you first let us know how Robert is doing? I mean, the family of Robert is doing, excuse me.
I think they're doing okay. I mean, I think they're certainly glad to see these criminal charges. I think it was almost 2 months after Robert was killed. You know, we were aware that there was an open investigation, that a special prosecutor had been appointed. You know, we had indications that they were taking the case seriously. So I think that helped the family feel better. But, you know, there's always, I think, this sense of, is something going to happen? Is the criminal justice system going to look at this and think that what happened here was okay, or will these individuals be charged with a crime? So I think seeing these charges is something that gives the family some amount of satisfaction, or a sense that, okay, something is happening here. And, you know, but for them, it's just kind of one piece of the picture of what the response needs to be for what happened to Robert Brooks.
Were you there the day when they were all officially charged?
Yeah, so what there's been now, I think, 10 officers who were charged or who were indicted by the grand jury. Those, as I understand it, were primarily the officers who were there during the most serious part of the beating and, you know, participated in the beating to some extent. Also those who kind of stood by and watched and had some kind of duty to intervene and didn't. And then the final indictment was for an officer who was charged with tampering with evidence for cleaning up the scene, presumably with the intent to conceal sort of what had happened. After, in the press conference that followed that court appearance, the DA indicated that there were 3 other officers who have agreed to plead guilty. And but the details of those pleas aren't publicly announced yet. And that I believe there were 2, or I think it was 2 or 3 other individuals who are still under investigation.
And there were 3 nurses, but they weren't charged with anything, right?
Correct.
I wonder, I mean, maybe the licensing board in New York, I mean, I'm not sure if you ever know this, but it's like, if they're nurses, how would they even keep their job for going along with what was happening, like their duty of care?
Yeah. It's tough to know, you know, what's going to happen with those nurses. Obviously, you know, it's a pretty high burden to establish that a crime was committed. I heard on a news report today that the DA, this was reported in the news, I didn't see the statement come directly from him, but that there was some indication that those nurses were ordered to stay out of the room, which would, I imagine, impact sort of the view of whether criminal charges are appropriate. We have asserted claims in our own civil rights lawsuit against those nurses under sort of the general, you know, constitutional law framework, which is all the state actors who were there, who had an opportunity to intervene to prevent this from happening, should have done that. And our burden of proof is a little lower, and we don't have the full facts of what was being said or wasn't being said on that video. I think you've seen the video, and it doesn't look like those nurses are all too bothered by what is happening. And yeah, in terms of licensing, I really am not sure what consequences may be out there for them. I imagine it would be interesting to see. We've requested from docs. We still do not have Robert's medical records. It would be interesting to see what they show, and if there's any, whether things were accurately reported on those records as they should have been.
Oh yeah, so you haven't gotten that yet.
We have not.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably big for them when you get those records.
Yeah.
So where we're at is, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't think a district attorney would go hard on the charges. Honestly, I was surprised. And I also surprised, not that they were just indicted, but indicted with murder. Because so many of these cases we see, it could be manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter or not murder. So that I was thinking maybe that could be the first time where correctional officers and that many charged, indicted. Now, I also think many of us who do this work, but for the family and other people, them seeing them walk out with bail, right? You're charged with murder, but you still walk out, right? And you're told to just stay home until whatever the next court proceeding is. And here, folks, if you don't know, Letitia James, the Attorney General, has a special prosecutor to deal with these cases, and this gives more resources to the DA and the lawyer and everybody. So, as for her doing her job with that, she absolutely did that. I know it's been hard on the family, but his son has spoken out. So I'm wondering, what is the sense that you got around community and people ready to help the family, as they pursue this around the values of social justice and things like that? How do you think the community has been responding?
It seems like they do have a lot of support. They've been in the Rochester area a long time. Mr. Ricks certainly is well known in that community. He also has been out to Albany. He spent the day meeting with legislators, like leadership in Albany, talking about reform. He also, it was on a day that he was there on a day that there were budget hearings. And so the docs commissioner testified, at the hearing about the budget. And he was asked a lot about what happened to Robert Brooks. And then Robert Ricks Sr. also gave testimony about Robert's killing at that hearing. And so I know Mr. Ricks especially is, putting himself out there in terms of advocating for change. I know he's been getting connected with community groups and advocacy groups that do work in Albany, and certainly the family supports him, but he's been taking a leadership role on that.
Yeah, and the fact was, so anybody who's not in New York, maybe you're not following the news, but a number of correctional officers are on what they call a wild strike. Basically, they negotiated their contract last month. This is considered an unsanctioned strike. So now the governor, Kathy Hochul, has to send the National Guard. And everybody that knows, anytime you send the National Guard, like in Attica, things do not go well. So what they're saying is that these correctional officers really took the timing to be like, if you want to indict COs, then we're going to strike and tell you how unsafe we feel. So that's happening. Then we don't know what's happening to other people that are incarcerated, right? For all we know, people could be in their cells and it hasn't been opened, or they're not eating, or what is happening in these prisons where the COs, are out there. do you think in seeing that, I mean, I guess, what's your feeling around that? Because the COs do have their union, but the unions were like, no, you shouldn't be on strike.
Oh, well, I'm not that close to it, obviously. I have been following the news very closely because I find it just fascinating and sort of frightening. The union has said they don't sanction this strike, yet they are negotiating its end with the governor. So clearly, the idea that the people on strike are somehow like out of control or not, being controlled by the union kind of rings a little hollow. I think the union has taken that position that they aren't authorizing it because it's against the law for correctional officers to go on strike in New York, and so they can't, sanction a strike. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, the timing with the indictments certainly, raises questions. I think other things that were sort of going on just prior to this was, the New York correctional system was under a lot of scrutiny because of what happened with Mr. Brooks. And, I think just with the legislative session getting going, there is a lot of momentum towards reform. And I think that was maybe another thing that the union was pushing back against. There does seem, of course, to be a lot of, legitimate concerns around staffing and having to work double shifts. And that's obviously a real problem. I think that's a real problem for incarcerated folks too. They know when staff is out of their minds because they, are just depleted. So I don't want to suggest that there aren't real issues there. It certainly seems like there are, but sort of this level of chaos, it feels very surprising and alarming. And of course, I'm just concerned for the safety of everyone who's stuck inside there with all these people having left their job posts.
Yeah, and that there's an act called the HALT Act, which stops indefinite solitary confinement. But I'm sure right now there might be incarcerated people who have been taken to solitary confinement. It seems in these last months, and maybe because we've seen so many videos, right? And George Floyd was horrific. But in this one, the camera footage is so clear. Like, it's high definition. You can see everybody in there. Watch the whole, so it seems now that many incarcerated people throughout the country are beginning to not be governable. They're beginning to say, we're not coming out of ourselves, or A, B, C, D, E. And I definitely think that this footage is probably the worst I've ever personally seen. I could be wrong on that. And I only watched these one time. I was even a little hesitant to show but I was like, that's the news kind of thing. So how does this case move forward now that there's indictments, right? There's one more that he has to physically come in to court still. What would be the next thing? Do you think this trial is going to be scheduled pretty fast? Because it's upstate New York, the courts are small and.
Yeah, it's tough to say. So yeah, I think that other individual who wasn't initially named has since been arraigned. So he that has been done. The next court date for everyone is March 31st. Criminal cases can sort of take all different types of paths. I think there was one individual who did not sort of immediately make bail. And so he was in custody for, I think, until today. I think he bonded out. He got out finally today. And usually when people are out of custody, the defendants are like less, pushing it along because they're just not suffering as much. So, I don't know how quickly it's going to go. It does seem like with the video, and since we know that there are folks who have pled guilty, I imagine that those folks will be testifying against the other officers. you know, I am not sure what kind of defense is available to the individuals who were charged. So, you know, I don't, and, you know, there's no confession. So it's hard for me to imagine a situation where there's like a lot of pretrial motions, you know, about throwing out evidence or anything like that. You know, I imagine maybe some of these other officers, given the fact that these charges carry a potential sentence of life, you know, would be interested in exploring pleas. So yeah, I'm not sure. I hope it will go quickly. I think people want to see resolution. One of the assistant district attorneys from Onondaga County, I think, was quoted on the news earlier this week saying that their current plan is to try all 10 of them together in one trial. So that would be certainly interesting to see, you know, if it goes to trial.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that if one of them or a couple of them are supervisors, the ones that were under them are going to plead it out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not going to go to trial if they can testify against who the lead people were that evening. So the civil rights, the civil rights complaint that you're going to file, are you filing with the feds and the attorney general?
Yeah, we have filed that. Well, we've filed 2 lawsuits. One is in federal court, and that is the civil rights lawsuit against the individual officers. And that is already on file. It's sort of going through the very slow startup process of getting people served. That one names all the folks who were on the scene and participated in the beating or didn't intervene to stop it. And then we've also named the docs commissioner and the then warden of Mercy, alleging basically that they failed to protect Robert by letting this sort of broken system be in place where officers felt like they could obviously get away with doing whatever. So that case is kind of just inching along as these things do in the very beginning. We also filed a case against the state of New York itself in the Court of Claims. And it's just like they're basically about the same thing. It's just this quirk that you can't sue the state in federal court. You can only sue it in this other state court called the Court of Claims. So that's why we have the 2 separate cases.
Yeah, I asked that because it's the Trump administration and Pam Bondi. I don't see them doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, the chaos of that department. I mean, even when the Democrats were in power and their AGs were always been reluctant to go and say this is a case,
mm-hmm.
you know, and it's going to be tried. I mean, I know there's been other settlements, I'm sure, in previous administrations, but I do remember the Rodney King case where then eventually they were went on trial for civil claims, and not the cops, but Rodney King and his family settled out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm curious to see what their response will eventually be. So the timeline right now is sometime in March. Then they're going to decide, you know, I'm sorry, so March, and then they're going to decide after that maybe set the court date for the trial to begin.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. There'll probably be, you know, maybe I know some discovery was tendered in court during the arraignments. You heard some references to that. I don't know if that means, you know, normally the defense attorneys are entitled to know everything about the investigation and obviously know all the facts that the state may use against them at trial. And so, you know, sometimes it takes a while to get all that stuff over to the defense attorneys so they have time to analyze it and determine what, if any, holes they can poke in the case. So yeah, I'm not sure how long it will take for that process to play out, but the next time they're due back in court is March 31st.
Yeah, I mean, either way, this is a history-making case because of the indictment and the murder charges.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I mean, I don't think COs have ever been, and I think maybe in New York State history, there's only been 1 or 2 times where a police officer was indicted and faced murder. And actually, that case was, I cannot remember the officer's name. I remember that he was Asian, and he got indicted and then was convicted, but then the judge overturned the conviction, citing he wouldn't be safe being incarcerated, which is like, right. I mean, but he, of course, nobody's safe when they're incarcerated. So for now, what can people do? I guess just keep following the case and support to the family, right?
Yeah, I think also there's gonna be, or I got the sense that there has been some legislation introduced in Albany that is kind of geared towards, Representative Julia Salazar introduced some legislation that was Robert Brooks specific, but I think there was a recognition even by her that, those few bills were not like the whole thing. They couldn't, that more needed to be done than the pieces of legislation that she passed. And so I imagine kind of, there will be, once it kind of, there's a better sense of what like the Justice for Robert Brooks package will be, there'll be some effort to kind of rally folks to advocate for passage. And I think that's sort of one thing to keep an eye out for. And I guess just, show love and support for all of your incarcerated loved ones. This is it feels like a really frightening time.
Absolutely. Well, Elizabeth, thank you again. Everybody, this is Elizabeth Massoud, the attorney for the Robert Brooks family. I appreciate the update. I know the next one I'll talk to you again.
Sure. Yeah, glad to.
Yeah, and then once the March date comes, I'm trying to get up there. I don't live far away. I know the courthouse is small, but I think the family is really beginning after this as well. It was trending so much. I'm sure the family is also receiving support from a lot of people around the country that deal with cases organizations. So that's good because they have to be surrounded by now. It's almost like it's a whole pattern. Then after it, how do we continue to support a family like that who lost everything due to just, it's just horrific. It's horrible and terrifying. And like you said, maybe so many people who have incarcerated people in their family in New York State are probably on edge right now, especially with sending in the National Guard, knowing how that has gone before.
Yeah. And, now I think visits are canceled, even legal calls and legal visits are canceled. Obviously, I know some attorneys are hearing from their clients and some of those accounts are making their way into the news. And I'm glad for that, but it's a difficult time to have an incarcerated loved one in New York.
Well, I am super grateful that I could have you on again. I know you're working day and night around this, and looking forward to the next update. And everybody, like I said, just follow the Brooks family. It's all over. It's in every newspaper in the country. This is going to be a big trial in a very, very small city. So we need to be there to support them. But again, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for being with me tonight.
You guys have a good evening.
You too, and I'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Oh, hey, people. Damn. Okay, I'm just going to turn around real quick. Hey, thank you all for tuning in. Follow the family. I think his son is on Instagram, maybe even TikTok. Thank you all for watching. Thank everybody for watching. Tomorrow, Can't Stop Our Blackness, Thursday, tomorrow at 7 p.m. And please go to the episode last week where I chopped it up with my comrade, Haydem Rivera. It's the most watched episode, and Hiram was dropping all the knowledge throughout the whole thing. And I've heard, especially from a lot of Afro-Latino folks, around the politic of Blackness, not just phenotype, So thank you, everybody. I'll see folks tomorrow. Appreciate you from tuning in. Keep following the case, read everything. And if anybody's in the New York State, upstate, support that family as much as you can because they're going to need it. All right. So peace on the Instagram and fam. And then peace to everybody here. As I keep saying, thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel. This is Disruptive Chaos, sponsored by Cooperation Jackson. Please follow my favorite 3 organizations, i.e., Cooperation Jackson, Liberation Farm, Soulfire Farm. And I'll catch folks tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And I'm sorry, at 7 p.m. with Can't Stop Our Blackness. And we're trying to grow the show. I gotta hire a producer, things like that. So any donations would be really, really appreciated because I am trying to find a producer. So everybody have a good one, and I will see you tomorrow evening. Peace.